I felt as though society was down here, the general population, and I was up here in this bubble, living different rules in a bipolar bubble. And for those people that understand bipolar, for many, many years, I thought you guys had the problem, the world, and I was bulletproof.
That's Heath Black, a former AFL footballer who spent 12 years as a midfielder for the Dockers and the Saints. On paper, it sounds like every player's dream, but the reality is he struggled terribly with his mental health from the start, battling demons that eventually led him to face criminal charges, marring the end of his difficult career.
Punishing myself, but also in violent rages, retaliating and trying to hurt people just as much as I wanted to get hurt. It was a very interesting time mentally, and obviously I got put before a judge.
It got worse before it got better. Heath's marriage took a major hit and he turned to drinking to numb the pain. Eventually diagnosed with bipolar and ADHD, it took him years of work to get his life back on track.
Take away those highs that you get from playing AFL, the most addictive game in the world, and fall into retirement with no real education around how you feel and all that sort of stuff. It's a recipe for disaster.
When he did, he had a new mission, using everything he's been through to help others overcome their mental health struggles.
Having that lived experience carries a bloody lot of weight when you're talking about your home truths, definitely.
It hasn't been pretty, but against the odds, Heath's turned his life into a success story more meaningful than he could have imagined.
Welcome to Young Blood, a podcast all about young men's health. My name's Callum McPherson, I'm a journalist, and this is our mission to talk about the stuff that matters and isn't talked about enough. Let's do it.
Tell us a bit about your childhood. What was it like growing up?
Yeah, I was from a split family. So mum and dad got divorced at the age of 3, which was, reasonably tough, no doubt, from what I can remember. My best mate was going through the same thing, so we sort of connected through those times. But with mum, it was Monday to Friday, Catholic primary school, a Good Shepherd in Mulgrave in an eastern suburbs in Melbourne, about 30 k's east. And then on the weekends with Dad, it was a bit different. There was, we'd go to the pub and or some backyard parties, or go to the footy, local footy, or we'd go out to Waverley and watch Essendon, and I'd stand on a milk crate. It was pretty different. It was pretty risky sort of behaviour. But then I'd, go back to mum's and do all the right things from Monday to Friday. And really look forward to hanging out with Dad. That sort of lifestyle suited me really well. And it was linked into my personality, and that was always being a bit of a risk taker. So, and knocking about with the lads was... I learned a hell of a lot from a street smarts point of view.
Was your dad a lot like that? Was he a lot like you?
Yeah, he's a garbo, and and still is today. Fantastic guy, family man, and the guys that he knocked around were the common garbos that you get back in the day, running behind the playing footy, running behind the trucks very early in the mornings when we used to pick up the little bins, the little trash cans, fit, strong. Back in the day where, there wasn't, if you had tattoos, it was a real statement. That you were
a bit dangerous.
You were dangerous. You rode a Harley and all of that. So
the whole stereotype sort of, but just like lads.
Yeah, just like lads, and they would finish up at the running on the trucks, and then end up down the Basie Hotel and drinking there, and that was just the sort of the way it was, and that was sort of part of my life growing up. I'm not saying that was every day, but it was that, and then.
But you liked that when you were there, and in those environments that suited you, and that sort of, as a young person, the kind of bloke you figured you'd wanted to be.
Yeah, that, and also going back to mum and not taking anything away from my mother, it was good. She brought me back into line and really set boundaries for me, which I really needed, because, at the end of the day, I was a young kid growing up with undiagnosed ADHD, 100%. And back then it was just, that little kid's had too much red cordial and give him a swift kick up the bum.
Yeah.
But my mind even back then was, racing, and I had huge amounts of energy. My focus and, was not great, and I was pretty ordinary at school. So,
and you would have just been told that, or the consensus would have been that you were just, sort of a bit of a rat bag and a bit badly behaved at times, but obviously there was more going on.
Yeah, there was, and unbeknownst to me, and I only got diagnosed at the age of 30, so that's only 11 years ago. And there was a lot of water went under the bridge before that magic little pill gets taken. The NABLE, which is the over here today, was called the VSFL, where all the boys out of Victoria get drafted. And I was given an opportunity at the age of 15, which was really young, to play under-18s footy. That just continued on. And we then got rezoned, which was really difficult. Played 2 years there, and then the Oakley Chargers got formed. So another 2 years at Oakley Chargers and drafted at the age of 17, where one player per side at that stage, there was an under-17s draft. So one 17-year-old per AFL team. And I was fortunate enough to go to the Fremantle Footy Club.
And that's young. That's real young, 17.
Too young, mate.
So what did that do to your head at the time, making it to the big league at that age?
Yeah, it probably fueled my personality even further. I had a fear of flying, so that was really tough, and a real fear, like a panic attack fear whilst on planes when going through turbulence. So I was happy to be drafted, really scared about knowing that I'd be in a plane heaps. Right. Definitely not willing to tell anyone how scared I was about flying, because that was just not, you don't speak about that sort of stuff.
Didn't fit your image, yeah.
Yeah, true. And I had to learn the worst song in the AFL, the Fremantle Footy Club song. Shocking. I was probably more upset about that. But and obviously went over there with a good friend of mine, Jess Sinclair. So it was great to have two young men, Victorians, going over there. And we're billeted out in our first year by Spider Burton, the tallest player in the AFL at that stage, his mother, Teresa. So that was an experience in itself. And I do recall the first 6 weeks of trying to fit in to that AFL culture is it was extremely hot in WA. I wasn't used to that coming from Melbourne. We weren't tapered into the pre-season as they are now as young guys watching their load and all of that. It was straight into mainstream training. And all I really did was eat, sleep, train, and at times cry into my pillow because I was so homesick. And that was sort of the routine until you are given the opportunity really early in my career to play AFL footy by round 4 in my first year.
And so being thrust into that and then finding yourself actually on the field making an impact and very much a part of that world before you're even legally a man, when you were really into it, did you feel like you knew who you were, or you hadn't even had time to think about that sort of stuff? It was just you, the player.
It's a great question. I reckon, and on reflection is a good thing. I was leading 2 different lives. Honestly, I didn't really know who I was as a person at all. I had this perception of what an AFL Australian footballer technically is, or what my head told me it was meant to be.
And it wasn't someone who was scared of flying who cried into their pillow at night.
Spot on. So I was leading, even unbeknownst to myself, really, a false persona.
Double life.
On the outside, trying to hold it all together, but even at a young age was very vulnerable on the inside, but wasn't addressing those vulnerabilities at all, just letting it all roll. And having fun and the drinking culture within the AFL back in 1997 is a lot different than what you see today. We were still fit and whatnot, but
that was there. Unlike players not drinking during the season now, it was sort of whatever goes.
And, you know, the drinking traditions even. I recall, you know, not made to, but in a way forced, if you want to call it that, by older players. You know, they pass you the beer bong and you're a new player and it's your job and duty to drink as many cans out of that beer bong until you vomit into a bin.
Yeah. And were you well accustomed to that by that point, having grown up as a lad? Or was it still extreme even for you? Because you're a young kid and these guys are grown men. Did you feel very much like you were the kid with something to prove?
Definitely, but I knew in the back of my head again that through my upbringing I was drinking. You know, I drank since the age of 13. Not every weekend or anything like that, but I was first drunk at the age of 13.
But it was normal to you.
It was pretty normal. So, and I'd had a little bit of practice on the beer bong beforehand, and I knew that I could sort of fit into this culture.
And it showed.
Yeah, and I downed them and I vomited, and but you get cheered off, and that was the way. In a weird twist, when I became a leader of the footy club, I continued those old school stupid traditions, and eventually through better leadership than what I was able to provide, you know, the Matthew Pavliches and those young kids coming through, just sort of stopped it.
Because you were conditioned on your way that was appropriate, that's what you should be doing and what you should be encouraging the young players to do, because that's the treatment you got. So you just thought that was sort of tradition?
Yeah, tradition, but I was, you know, again, reflection, I was shitty at the fact that maybe I could have changed the cycle, and I didn't. And I probably wouldn't have, because it was enjoyable. You know, you would play, and back then Fremantle were pretty ordinary, so we'd often lose. And our major sponsor at that stage was a Left Bank Hotel. So again, that two-team town mentality, you're starting off as a young kid, you've got the fame, you've got the chicks, you've got the money, and money was huge back then. I'd never seen anything like it before.
And then you got so much all at once, totally unprepared to handle it.
All at once, and I'm happy to say this because I say it often, is that I earned $177 a week as a carpenter in Melbourne, apprentice carpenter with my stepdad, and 12 months after getting drafted, I had $114,000. That's 1997. So that's a huge amount of money back then to have totally accessible to me. Again, with my personality, it was just, I remember coming back for the first time back to Melbourne to my mates. I had a license because I got it at 17 over in WA, and they were still waiting for theirs. And through a 6-week period of going pretty hard over in Melbourne, I shouted and blew for my mates $5,000.
Yeah.
Just because I could, just because I wanted to. I wanted them to have fun with me.
Yeah.
I wanted them to get a feel for it, and that was just the way it was.
And I guess you were pretty confident it was going to last, which it did. You had a long career, although it was tough. But yeah, I can't quite imagine what that's like to be that young and then sort of be given the keys to the city, essentially, and then have all those influences around you. How did it affect your actual performance? Like, were you still playing well when you were partying?
Yeah, and look, I want to put it out there that my drug of choice was alcohol. I wasn't, and a lot of people find that hard to believe.
Was there much of a drug culture when you were in the league when you started?
Not. I first saw harder street drugs in 2000.
Yeah.
And prior to that was the occasional joint, maybe. And then obviously it's progressed to maybe what you see today with, I suppose, the drug of choice being cocaine, I suppose.
But it's very different to when you were playing.
Yep, and I was never one to dabble off into those harder street drugs at all. A VB stubby was my drink of choice, and that's the way it sort of rolled, and that was bad enough for me in the end. Later on towards retirement, but
you were still playing good footy even though you were on the piss.
Yeah, look, it was, and people, you know, often asked, is it that Ben Cousins mentality? Ben was such a better player than I was, and I used to have to play on him a lot. And I admire his on-field performance, and probably playing my best sort of footy. The club were probably well aware that I would be at Moondyne and Joe's hotel in Fremantle on Mondays, and we'd have Tuesday off. And I'd sort of, depending on performance and how I was feeling, I'd go pretty hard on that Monday.
Yep.
But always, every single Tuesday, absolutely smash myself in the gym. So it was like a risk and reward
trying to justify it.
And even today, I use the seesaw. Okay, so if I'm overdoing it and not getting enough sleep, well, something's got to give. Got to bring the seesaw back.
Balance
got to eat better, or what?
Yeah.
So that's just that's a real common or an easy philosophy for me. Is if the seesaw's one side, I'm at risk of pretty ordinary behaviour.
How did you view yourself at that time when you were in the league and you're a bit of a star and had all this cash and effectively living the dream? How did you actually see yourself, and did you like yourself?
Yeah, another ripping question. I was living in two things. I call it the AFL bubble and protected by the brand, and not so much now. I mean, if you do something, you're very much scrutinised. But back then, I felt as though society was down here, the general population, and I was up here in this bubble, living different rules in a bipolar bubble. And for those people that understand bipolar, for many, many years, I thought you guys had the problem, the world, and I was bulletproof. And especially when you're high on or hypermanic or you're in a manic episode.
When you're on that upswing.
You're on the upswing. I try to explain it to people, playing footy nearly every single weekend, I was hypermanic, and that was fueling, it was my natural medication. So naturally, take away those highs that you get from playing AFL, the most addictive game in the world, and fall into retirement with no real education around how you feel and all that sort of stuff. It's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
So
it's similar in some ways to leaving the military, although different, but you've always had that structure and you've always had that extreme stimulus, and then you have that pulled out from under you.
Spot on. Spoken to many people returning from obviously Afghanistan and whatnot, and their life and death. We're just footballers, and they talk about bullets going over their heads and being there with their mates, and they're in the trenches and the camaraderie and all of that, and then coming back to normal society. No more bullets, no more. So what have they? What's their sort of high? Is it having a fight in a pub, or
And you're looking for something to fill that hole because you can't just have nothing. So you definitely experienced that.
Yeah, with ADHD too, I'm continually chasing stimulation. So I might be transfixed on the gym, and I've got to use the gym to release that energy every day.
Yep.
I've got to get a really good night's sleep, because if I don't sleep, it's hard for people to understand, but I get more energy the next day if I don't sleep. So I've got to monitor my sleep. All of these things I've picked up on now, but essentially that the whole AFL structure, playing with a group of men, fighting it out, partying with them afterwards, was just the perfect fit for the way I was wired here.
Yeah, sort of the perfect storm.
Yep, 100%.
And on reflection, when you look at the expanse of your career, do you see where those underlying mental health conditions were affecting you and pushing you to behave in a certain way? Like, what stands out in that way? Yeah,
for 6 years, for more, for my whole career, for 12 years, but in particular for a block of 6, pre-performance anxiety, and even anxiety today. Like, I woke up today, no real sleep because we've just moved into a new home, so I was up late. The kids woke up at the normal time, and I knew that I was going to have energy today, and that can worry me as well. So anxiety kicked in. Back in the day, I'd try and work out why anxiety was around, and I don't anymore. I just say I accept that it's there.
Yep.
And I know that with anxiety, it will pass. And I can put measures in place to make it pass a bit quicker through education. So, and breathing techniques and all of that. So, but it's good to talk about, like even today, that I've just openly said on an open forum that this, rough looking sort of bloke that hasn't had a shave for a while is woken up with anxiety, and I'm cool with that. So, but pre-performance anxiety was very different and at times quite crippling. And I was very structured by time, like that obsessive compulsive sort of nature, as a lot of players are. And I would be unfortunately sitting on the toilet before games, every single game, dry reaching, out of control diarrhea, heart palpitations, urinating every 30 to 40 seconds. There's just a hell of a lot of things going on. And just out of control sweat. When I was at St Kilda, they came up with an idea to put me on an oxygen mask 3 minutes before running out. No proven evidence that worked, but that did, placebo, I reckon, calm me down.
Uh-huh.
And can you imagine in front of your mates, Robert Harvey and Aaron Hamill and Fraser Garrick are walking into the medical room.
They're
and
like, what the fuck?
Heath Black.
Here's Darth Vader.
What? But I tell you what, if you had a good game, the next game, if you would be on the oxygen mask,
they'd be like, what's in that oxygen?
Yeah. Oh, classic. But look, we tried everything, and nothing would really work.
Were you seeing a psychologist? Did you have sports psychs back then?
Yeah. With breathing, it just was nearly a panic attack every game. And the boys would remember I was always dry reaching. Going up the race, I'd be keeling over, and then I would urinate all the time out on the ground with the coin toss. It was just so set to routine. And then sometimes, depending on performance at halftime, it would come back. And in a way, this might sound a bit funny, if you were having to kill a game and you're arguably in the top three, I'd come in and have huge amounts of anxiety because I knew I had to continue that performance.
Uh-huh.
Where if I was playing shit, there was a huge room for improvement.
Uh-huh. Right.
So the anxiety would be less.
Yeah. But when you were playing really well, you felt like the eyes and the attention was on you.
Yeah, a lot more. And I hated halftime. I wish we could just keep playing. I hated the breaks because that
you had
meant
to stop and think.
Yep.
Yeah.
Think about performance. Think about, am I doing the right role for the team? All of that stuff. And I really struggled to retain information by the coaches because this thing was going so fast.
Yeah.
So I was just more of a go out and play and just do your thing and hope for the best.
That being the case, did you still love the game, given that it was making you freak out that much?
Wow. I hated the game. Loved it for maybe the first 5 years of my career. And then, geez, it became it was a fight. I was having a fight with it every week. Sometimes you were massively on massive highs and it was the best ever. But ultimately, I remember talking to teammates that were in a similar situation to me mentally and also big risk takers off the field and quite big personalities. It's funny who you attract when you're in that mindset.
Mm.
And I attracted similar like-minded blokes and we were quite poisonous.
Well, you were enabling each other to distract each other from the reality that was really tough to deal with.
Spot on. And I think when I heard someone talking about a previous AFL coach about the victim's corner. And when things aren't going well and you're in shit form, you go in the victim's corner and you try and recruit other victims to you. And that's essentially what was happening to me. I was on a recruiting drive trying to get negative people to agree with the way I was feeling about the game. And I did. I recruited 3 or 4, and we were the big drinkers. We were, yep.
Yeah.
And it's funny how toxic we were for each other.
Well, also, it's the case that, if my teammates are doing it, whether I'm making them do it or not, then it's all right.
Yeah, in a way. And you would sort of never have those conversations with these guys. But you knew wholeheartedly that if you came together as a group, you were ultimately going to do the wrong thing. By the law of the land of what an AFL footballer should be doing, when those groups came together, those boundaries were broken every time.
Yeah, and you felt like you were really fitting that stereotype at the time.
Yeah. And then I reckon the next day though, the anxiety would kick in because one, you've let your teammates down by being on the booze and out late. You're feeling shit. You're more anxious because you've drank too much, and the only way I sort of to help overcome it was to try and train as hard as you could. But I think, funnily enough, I sort of was able to get away with it because of my energy levels. I was always able to push through that hangover feeling, where maybe the other guys that I was recruiting, they might have taken a toll on them a little bit more.
Would you get that energy? Would you get that mania after not sleeping much and drinking a lot?
Yep. It happened more later on in my career when we were first medicated, and I was on, probably for 2 years, I was on the wrong medication. It was enhancing my undiagnosed bipolar. Bipolar is really hard to diagnose, and we were trying to get there, but it takes time. It really does. And you're playing with different pills and you're trying to play footy, and it was really hard. Sometimes I'd go out on the footy field with the new medication feeling extremely foggy in the head, or in a depressive episode, and dragging your feet through 2 hours of AFL because your meds, or you're coming off your medication and you're going through withdrawals, which is like having the flu.
Did your teammates know that you were on meds, and did you feel a level of shame about it all?
I was quite happy and quite relieved, even when doing the Beyond Blue survey way back when and ticking a few boxes for depression. I thought, no, there's a reason here. I'm happy with that, and I'm quite excited taking medication to overcome that. It worked to a certain extent, but these huge highs and full body buzzes for days was very much linked into wrong meds and also shit going on in my life. But the medication was making me go pretty wild.
And then, of course, mixing that with alcohol can be a disaster too.
Loaded gun.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
When did you really start to struggle with your mental health and it started to fall apart?
Yep. 2008 was retirement. Three big things, three things happened. I was going through a massive relationship breakdown and kids involved and all of that. The last 5 weeks of my career, I was homeless, living out the back of my car, playing AFL footy with no money, all my clothes in the back of the Toyota Prado with my dog.
All right.
And but lo and behold, in a twist, the weirdest part is I was in career best form. And that's just bizarre to even get your head around.
What do you put that down to? You had nothing else to focus on at that time?
Yeah, maybe. Do you know what? Maybe the anxiety. It might just be I don't give a fuck. I'm just rolling with this. So I even remember drinking we had a twilight game against Essendon and on the Saturday, and I reckon I drank 6 stubbies on Friday night, which I've never ever done. Yes, I was a big drinker, but not much before games, if any. So I really remember drinking those 6 beers, waking up a bit hazy, knowing anxiety from knowing that I've done the wrong thing, and just had a rip snorter, just leather poisoning. It was, and then you trick yourself that this is all right.
Did you do it again?
Yeah, of course. Those 5 weeks were career best form, massive risk taking, nightclubs. Relationship was gone. I was getting a divorce, and there was just I don't care. I'm going to have as much fun as I possibly can. And footy was third on the list. Drinking, girls, and footy.
Yeah. Where did that lead you?
It led me to retirement. So those three things, obviously, relationship breakdown, retirement, and my body was gone. I had 3 operations in 3 weeks. And this might sound a bit weird, but because of my mindset and the mania, I was becoming quite addicted to the feeling of getting put under. And the painkillers and the sedative drugs that they were prescribing was making me more normal and just being able to deal with day-to-day life. So that was interesting, getting over hernia, shoulder reco, and my hips got done.
Opioids?
Yeah.
Because you couldn't get into that state without that.
No, not at all. I wasn't saying I was not necessarily addicted to the painkillers afterwards, but addicted to the feeling of general anaesthetic and that total release of not having to think anymore, which leads us into those when things really did get bad and spiralling out of control. Those suicidal sort of thoughts and tendencies were starting to play in my mind a little bit. Didn't have a plan, didn't have an attempt, but it was just in the back of the head thinking about what it felt like when I was going under in those operations.
And that was after you'd retired?
Yeah, so 2008 retired. I was working at Channel 7 as a sports reporter for 10 hours a week, so not much commitment, and getting paid $50K a year to do that. So still reasonable money just to tick them over. Was buying and selling commercial property as a director of a company, but didn't have to put any collateral behind. It was just doing big deals. And again, think about what we've just spoken about with personality and chasing stimulus. I was doing deals like $12 million. Not my money, but imagine the thrill of that over long lunches at the Raffles Hotel, down in 3 bottles of Sauvignon Blanc Cloudy Bay, and securing a $12 million deal.
Not something that someone in your frame of mind needed to be doing at that time.
Ridiculous. And look, the guys that I was in business with had just sold their business, and they were worth a lot of money and fantastic guys. And again, just all fueled each other. They were a lot older than me, and I just felt safe. It was that time just suited me, and obviously, some run-ins with the law, some drink driving charges, some assaults, and essentially 4 big incidents in a short amount of time. Channel 7 gave me the sack, which was fair enough. And the boys that I was in business with also striked me off the directorship of the commercial property buying. So I was on my ass, broke, and it was my fault. So there was no pointing fingers. I'm sad. And every time I got in the shit with the law, I'd put my hand up and say I was guilty. I'd just take it on the chin. And I saw a lot of the inside of a courtroom in 2008, 9, 10, and 11.
Throughout that, were you operating still with that mindset of, I don't give a fuck?
Yep. Yeah. World's got the problem. Went on a footy trip at the end of 2008 and just annihilated myself. Took a whole lot of money over, and the risky behaviour that I engaged in over there. I was on a different time clock to the 35 of me mates at Freo. I would be roaming the streets till wee hours of the morning on my own, and I'd sleep during the day, and it was just bizarre.
Were you sort of punishing yourself or looking for trouble, like looking to really implode because you didn't like yourself?
Yeah, all of that, and also wanted to put myself, I believe, in situations of going back to those suicidal tendencies. And I've had a lot of therapy around this, identifying it, putting myself into a situation where possibly I would get shot, beaten up to the point of no return.
Yeah.
And that was my way of going down that path. Yeah, absolutely. I got beaten up many times and hurt and all of that, but not to that extent.
But you were inviting it because
I was inviting
you were punishing yourself.
Punishing myself, but also in violent rages, retaliating and trying to hurt people just as much as I wanted to get hurt. It was a very interesting time mentally, and obviously I got put before a judge. Judge Stephen Heath, Chief Magistrate of Perth, and he was, I believe, reasonably soft on me. He could have been a lot harder, but there was a lot of things put in place that I had to achieve around learning about alcohol, engaging myself in as an outpatient at the Leederville Clinic, which was pretty scary. So I'd go through the back door, see my doctors, do my therapy, some group sessions and stuff, which was fairly hectic with ice addicts, and I was just trying to recover from alcohol, and that was bad enough. And go down that process of trying to work out what the bloody hell was going on with this bipolar. So we did get correct diagnoses of bipolar through that whole scenario, but we got, again, wrong medication to deal with bipolar. So I was on a roller coaster ride for another couple of years to get, one, ADHD medication and correct diagnosis for ADHD, and also correct medication for bipolar 2.
And you only narrowly avoided going to jail.
That, in my opinion, spent a few times in East Perth lockup, and this felt at ease in there on my own in that cell, away from public. And it was time for me just to, used to wear a black jacket with a hoodie. And I remember just putting the hoodie on and just sitting in the corner. And I remember vividly looking down at the East Perth floor at the lockup, and there was a bit of tomato there. Like, how the hell do you remember that? A blind off my guts. Like, I mean, hammered. They said, do you need a lift home? And this is how intoxicated. I said, no, I'll walk. I know where I am, East Perth, North Bridge is over there. Took a wrong turn and ended up lost. Had to get a cab back home, and I was like 25 minutes the wrong way on that night. So I used to come home to Asha, my partner and now wife, and just show her the green slip, and she knew where I had been. And that was, a place where I felt safe. So, but me in jail, no way. Like, didn't want to go there, scared, all of that stuff, but was pretty close, very, very close.
And your wife was really there for you throughout that rock bottom?
100%. Was very lucky. A lot of people that have these similar stories don't have that support, and I was one of the lucky ones that did. I don't know how Asha continued on, that's for sure. But I think, we helped each other in some ways. I know it might be hard to get your head around that as well, but I think a lot of the things that maybe Asha hadn't seen or been accustomed to in her life, I was showing her another way of life, if you know what I mean, that risky behaviour, which also probably has helped her in her sort of work and dealing with people and stuff like that. So, and I've learned how to be a lot more passive and going back and trying to study and stuff like that. So, and that I wouldn't have been able to do that without Asha.
That's nice. What steps did you take to start to pull yourself back up and come out of this?
Yeah, look, only burst my bipolar above the law bubble probably in therapy. So I was still hanging on to my life even after the judge let me off to a certain extent. And I was still, I'll be right. So it took a little while still. But once the bubble popped and the outpour of emotion and starting to write a book was massive.
You mean letting go of that persona and that front that you've been holding up?
Just the front, just the lies, the living the second life, the persona, the perception of what I had to be like in public compared to the person behind the four walls of my home. People just would not believe the difference. And it was a massive difference. And getting the book going years ago, and admittedly, when I had a ghostwriter, and she would come in and put the video or the tape on the kitchen bench, and I'd have no shirt on, me footy shorts on, and I'd be drinking long neck stubbies. And that's how the book started. And it was just this, it was therapy. It was, and I wasn't paying for it. And the book started in a really erratic fashion. And then 3 years later, it sort of came together to be off the cuff, a bit out there Hollywood sort of stories, which that's what happens with people that don't get help early enough. It came together as a bit of a mental health book, which I'm pretty proud of.
Did you write a lot of it in the end?
It's all my words, but I'm not academic enough to actually put pen to paper or type. I tried, but it was just all over the shop. And there are a lot of contradictions within the book to how I was mentally at the beginning to, I suppose, the book goes from wild to then quite stable and correct medication and all of that.
Yes, you had that narrative arc. And I was just about to ask that, who were you at the end of the book by the time it was written?
Yeah, I was still finding my path, there's no doubt, and I'm still on my mental health journey now. As I said before, I woke up with anxiety today. So what? But I will always continue to be in my mental health journey and learning from people like yourself. You know, like you really know your stuff, and I love listening to people and learning from their own stories, because storytelling for me, and with my job, getting up in front of people when we're not in COVID, and being able to share and show your vulnerabilities and talk openly and passionately as we've done today. Once men feel comfortable in this forum, we'll talk and tell people how we feel. So, yeah, storytelling is massive, and I think in this forum like today, it's really powerful for men, and we should be encouraged to do it.
Absolutely. And on your own healing journey, what has it done for you getting up and delivering that message and seeing the impact that it makes on other people? How has that helped you heal?
I often get asked this, and I say it sounds quite selfish, but the more that I do publicly and on the road, the better I feel mentally for myself, because I feel like I'm helping people. And through this COVID process, you know, the amount of people that I've had to refer in Melbourne to different doctors and whatnot has been unprecedented. But again, if I'm feeling down and I'm helping someone else, it's naturally making me feel better.
Absolutely, man. And what have you learned through all this about yourself?
One, that I'm definitely not bulletproof, and I could never have done this on my own. Never. I've learned that I can be patient, that I can learn academically, which I was really apprehensive and didn't back myself in that area. I've learned that you can be a bit of a trailblazer, and you know, back 11 years ago, talking about mental health, there wasn't too many of us. So there was probably Wayne Swass and me, and now have a look at how many people just put their hand up and get out there. And
it's come a long way.
It's come a long way, and it needed to. Can remember having 4 or 5 people to a presentation, and now at times I can have 1,000 people, or online you might have 10,000 hits in 24 hours. Or it's just, but again, I've also learned to massively show your vulnerabilities in public and in forums when you're feeling down. And because it instantly clicks me into, if I'm preaching this, how am I going?
Yeah.
How am I feeling?
You've got to be it as well. You've got to embody it. And there can be that where you surround yourself, you're surrounded with it in your life and preaching, and it's your job and you're all about it. And you've got to actually practice what you preach and remember to check in with yourself, because when you're focusing on others a lot of the time and how they're going, and that's very important, but you can lose sight of the fact that you have to continually put effort and attention into making sure that you're okay and getting enough sleep and doing all the right things, and that there is pressure on all of us to keep that stuff up and do the right stuff to keep our mental health in check, because unfortunately, even for those who haven't been diagnosed with a mental illness at some point in their life, there's no, I've ticked the box, so I'm all good forever. You know, you have to keep it up. You have to keep managing yourself.
Big time. And I'll get reviewed with my medication twice a year, and sometimes it goes up and whatever. That's okay. Or another medication will be prescribed, but it's not all about the meds. It's about, as you just said, there's a whole list of things that I have to do each day to make sure that this is okay. I think we often, we lift weights and we look in the mirror and we're looking okay and everything's going all right. We focus too much on our physical health and probably not enough on our mental health. And I've got to train harder on my mental health than I ever had to do a full pre-season of AFL footy. And I know that now. So the balance is sort of swapped. I concentrate on getting this right, which will then allow me to train hard. And I do. I still train and still love it.
What do you think of the man you are now compared to who you were, and how different that is?
Look, I still have demons. I still question myself. I still question behaviour at times, not in public or just sometimes I might, it might be road rage and I might get upset and say the wrong thing in the car in front of the kids. And that little trigger 8 hours later will be in my head that I've done the wrong thing and I'm going to go back to what it was like. And I never want to go back there. But ultimately, I think I'm all right. I think I'm okay. And I know that I'll always continue to strive to be better. And whether that can bring on anxiety, it can, but I just want to learn and continue to learn from people. And that's my motto.
And it strikes me that you're very honest with yourself now, whereas you used to be completely dishonest with yourself. And it's not about becoming perfect, and that'll never happen, and nor do we need it to. But it's like you've said, it's waking up and realizing that yes, you are feeling anxious, and that's okay. That's happening. There's certain things you can do to improve that, but just knowing that that's all right and letting yourself off the hook and doing what needs to be done to bring yourself back up to where you want to be. That's what's important, and that's the message that we're trying to get across to people. It's not that you should be perfect and that you shouldn't have problems. It's that you can accept that and you can do what needs to be done to try and make yourself as best as you can be.
You nailed it, mate. 100%.
Last thing I'm really interested in is if you could be remembered as an AFL veteran with a spotless record who never put a foot wrong, would you take that, or would you take the reality?
I would never, ever change anything apart from physically and mentally hurting people and doing the wrong thing with the law to a certain extent. But everything else, no way, not changing, because I wouldn't be in this position to be able to sit and talk to you or, have my business where you go out and you talk and you help people. As I said, I'm fortunate enough to be able to storytell and share your experience. And and do a little bit of education around and train yourself up in mental health first aid and suicide assist, and you go to schools and you become a professional in the field. But it all comes back to that personal experience of mental health, and I think having that lived experience carries a bloody lot of weight when you're talking about your home truths, definitely. So,
and isn't it funny that living through all that allows you to now live such a meaningful life in terms of your work?
Yep. I've got a great job. Look, I'm a stay-at-home dad of 4 kids, and obviously don't travel at all at the moment, living in Melbourne, but don't travel anywhere near as much, but still very active in the space, and love my job. Love being a stay-at-home dad, yet very, very challenging. And the first 8 months of being a stay-at-home dad, I was tested immensely with my mental health because I didn't think I was providing. And the other thing in Melbourne with lockdown 1 of COVID, I was challenged massively with mental health because I was taken away from routine. So the lockdown 2, I've been really good because I've got used to it. I'm in routine, and I'm somewhat anxious coming out of lockdown 2. What does that mean for me? So always, you never know. You never know how you're feeling. And
but what you are accruing is a cache of evidence of when things have changed and it's been uncomfortable, but you've adapted and you've made it work. And the more you build that up, the more faith you have that you'll be able to adapt to whatever comes next, because we know that change is the only constant. It's going to keep coming.
Bloody oath. Yeah, and I'm a little bit better with that these days. Was definitely hated change, but, new house, that's a big change for me. And as I look around, there's boxes and clutter everywhere, which I hate. And but good night's sleep tonight, and feet up, and we'll have a crack again tomorrow.
And it ain't half bad.
No, it's not. No, we're very lucky. We've got jobs, and we haven't been smashed by COVID, and everything's pretty much normal here.
Well, it's been really good to be able to hear from you like this, man. I really appreciate having your time, and you're such a deep thinking, reflective individual now who I can totally have a picture in my mind of who you used to be, but you're obviously living your truth now and being so authentic, and you've reached this point in your life where you can have that sort of impact on the next generation and people your age, and that's almost seems like it was meant to be. I don't personally believe in that, but I think who you are now is a very important individual for us to have around, and someone that others who've been involved in AFL and high level sport and just generally can look up to and see a bit of themselves in, and hopefully take better care of themselves. So thank you for what you do and for who you are, and it's been a real honour to get to have this chat with you, man.
Nah, absolute pleasure. Happy to help out at any time. And if anyone that's listening wants to contact me, and I'm here to help anybody that's listening. So just jump on, just Google my name. It's easy to get in contact. And so if you want to have a chat at any stage, just look me up. You're
a legend, Heath. You better get back to those 4 kids, I reckon, mate.
Yep.
Make sure you're putting in.
I am.
If you're a fan of the work we're doing or have a suggestion for the show, please rate us on Apple Podcasts and leave a comment. You can follow Youngblood Men's Health Matters on Facebook, Instagram and YouTube, and visit our website youngbloodmedia.com.au to stay up to date. And most importantly, if this conversation resonated with you, share it with someone you love and start a conversation of your own. A huge thank you to our local business supporters who've joined our mission to change the lives of young men for the better and help make this possible. We're all in it together. This is Youngblood. Thanks for being part of the mission. Catch you next time.